Hey Rip City, this is Anthony Simons, and it's time to open the briefcase with Casey Holdahl.
Greetings, Blazer fans, and welcome to The Briefcase, episode 135 of The Briefcase, presented to you by our friends at Spirit Mountain Casino. I'm your host, Casey Holdahl, and the Portland Trail Blazers winning streak is over, unfortunately, and now a losing streak has begun, both literally and figuratively when you think about it, with road losses to both the Timberwolves and the Nuggets after that 7-game homestand. The Blazers finishing off the unofficial first half of the season on the road, lose a game in Minnesota, lose the first of 2-game series versus the Nuggets in Denver. One more game to play versus the Nuggets, once again in Denver before starting the All-Star break. They'll have to do that without both Deandre, Ayton, and Scoot Henderson. Not sure how long either one of those players is going to be out. Could be potentially longer than just that one game versus the Nuggets, though obviously having the All-Star break to recuperate, that will help a bit. Blazers, as I mentioned, still have one game left to go before the All-Star break, which we'll talk about on this edition of The Briefcase, presented by Spirit Mountain Casino. Well, after wrapping up a 7-game homestand with a win versus the Kings to extend their win streak to 7 games, Trailblazers had their win streak ended with a 114-98 loss to the Timberwolves in Minnesota on Saturday night. You started to kind of see some cracks forming in that Kings game at home. The Blazers still able to get that victory, but you kind of started to feel like they looked like they were maybe a little bit tired. Defense seemed to be dropping off a little bit. That was really the story of that win streak and that homestand for the Trailblazers, is the great defense they played, allowing them to get victories on that homestand. That defense did not seem to make the trip to Minneapolis, unfortunately. Again, the defense that you saw that started to slip versus the Kings, full-on rug pull versus the Timberwolves on Sunday night, versus a team in the Timberwolves playing without Anthony Edwards, Mike Conley Jr., and Julius Randle, among a few other players as well. Now, the Blazers had beaten the Timberwolves twice at Moda Center earlier this season, not able to do the same thing in Minnesota this weekend as well. Blazers got off to not a great start. Chauncey Billups in his comments after that game mentioned that, he felt like they lost that game in the first quarter, taking some bad shots, not being as attentive as they needed to on the defensive end. And, that bad start, Blazers were able to come back from that. They were down 9 in the first quarter, but had a great second quarter, outscoring the Timberwolves 38-23 to take a 13-point lead into the half. But I even remember thinking, I thought it was interesting that Chauncey had said this in his postgame, that even though they were leading at 13 at the half, I did not have a very good feeling about their chances of winning that game in the second half. And turns out both Chauncey and myself were right. The Blazers would hold the lead for a while in the third, actually the entirety of the third quarter, but you could kind of see it going in a certain direction in the third quarter. And then in the fourth quarter, the Blazers get absolutely blown out. They scored just 14 points in the fourth quarter on 3 of 22 shooting from the field, while the Timberwolves shot 13 of 20 from the field and 5 of 6 from 3 to pull away in that game. Naz Reid, Jaden McDaniels, Rudy Gobert, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, basically any of the guards had a pretty good game that night. I believe Jaden Daniels, 30 points. That might be a new career high for him on 12 of 17 shooting. Never great when a guy goes 12 of 17 from the field. And so the Trailblazers end up losing that one, as I mentioned, 114-98 to end their winning streak. And also the Blazers had I believe, a 3-game road winning streak as well, dating back to the last road trip that went through Florida and Charlotte. So that streak is now over as well. So the Trailblazers start off this 3-game end of the first half of the season homestand with a loss to the Timberwolves, which doesn't really portend great things for the 2 games they had coming up versus the Timberwolves and versus the Nuggets in Denver. Kind of a tough way to go from a homestand to playing in Minnesota and 2 games in Denver. And I think we kind of saw the repercussions of that, or at least the things that you saw that weren't working for the Trailblazers in that Timberwolves game are the same things that you saw a few nights later versus the Nuggets. Well, we saw on that homestand that the Trailblazers did look like they have a lot of up-and-coming players, which should get you ready for the up-and-coming country, an unforgettable country concert at Spirit Mountain Casino in Grand Ronde on April 19th, 2025. This highly anticipated country music event will feature 3 of country music's brightest stars, John Morgan, Abby Anderson, and Brandon Davis. kick off the evening with Abby Anderson, whose soulful hits like Make Him Wait and Bad Posture have captured hearts nationwide. Brandon Davis will follow up with his heartfelt performances of Step by Step and Destiny, showcasing his relatable lyrics and rich vocals. I assume that Step by Step isn't the theme song from the show Step by Step, which I might be able to sing the entirety of. TGIF was an important thing in my generation in terms of television, and Step by Step being an important part of the TGIF lineup. I'm guessing that's not what the Step by Step song that Brandon Davis sings, but if it is, you're you might get an extra ticket sale for that one. But then to top off the night, the sensational John Morgan will take the stage, known for his standout hits like Coldest Beer in Town. Boy, if that's not a country song, I don't know what is. And right in the middle, John's high energy performances and raw emotional connection with the audience will make this a night to remember. Tickets start at just $35. You must be 21 and over to attend. Head on over to spiritmountain.com for tickets. Spirit Mountain Casino on Highway 18 in Grand Ronde. Elevate your game. So you had the Kings game at home, which again, the Blazers able to get the win at home, but you started to see some cracks forming in terms of the way they've been playing as of late, or some cracks forming, or at least some fissures in terms of the things that they were doing well during that homestand that you started to see kind of trail off a little bit versus the Kings, but they were still able to get the game versus the Kings. Then I would say that cascade kind of sped up a little bit versus the Timberwolves, not able to get that game versus the Timberwolves, even though they lead for much of the game, go up by as many as 15 points, end up losing that game to the Timberwolves. And then you really see things degrade 2 nights later versus the Denver Nuggets. Blazers losing 148-117 to the Nuggets on Monday night. Blazers made the first bucket of the game and then would never lead again. Nuggets, I believe, made their first 11 shots, go up by as many as 17 points in the first quarter, and end up going up by as many as 32 points in that game. Never a real competitive game for the Trailblazers. Never seemed like they had much of a chance in that one. You know, there were a couple times where they got it down the lead, and I think in the second quarter to like 7 or 8, and at that point in time, if you're thinking like, boy, if they can be on single digits going into the half, maybe they got a bit of a shot, even though, again, the way that the Nuggets were playing and the way the Blazers were playing, you kind of, I didn't really get a sense that even if it was closer, that it was probably going to make a whole lot of difference. But, you can get lucky, but you do got to kind of sort of keep it close. But that was never, anytime they got it down to single digits, it popped right back up to double digits. Nuggets end up shooting 66% from the field for that game, have 44 assists on 60 made baskets, which is ridiculous, and score 88 points in the paint. 88 points in the paint for the Denver Nuggets, a team that obviously scores a lot of points in the paint. Obviously, you have Nikola Jokic, who's taking up a lot of space down there. He's a depth scorer there, but he also creates things for other guys in the paint. And boy, howdy, they sure did that to the Trailblazers on Monday night. So, again, a blowout loss for the Trailblazers versus a Nuggets team that's definitely been rounding into form as the season has gone on. And you got a Blazer team that, again, to me, looks like they kind of need the break. I think they've played basically every other day since the beginning of the year, actually. I don't know if there's been 2 consecutive days off since the start of 2025. And they also have a number of guys who are dealing with some injury issues. So, they didn't have Jeremy Grant in the game versus the Nuggets, didn't have Robert Williams in that game as well. Denny Avdia has been dealing with a wrist hand injury, and I think it's kind of starting to affect his play. He hasn't missed any games with it yet, or I don't think he has at least, but you can tell that it's been an issue for him. I think you can kind of see his numbers, particularly his averages over the last couple of games. They're starting to trail off a little bit, and I think that's mostly because of that injury. And Denny is not going to allow himself to miss those games, but he could probably use a bit of time off as well. But then you have 2 guys go down in that game versus the Nuggets, and that really becomes the story of the game for Portland. I mean, it's one thing to lose a game to a good team like the Nuggets. It's another thing to lose multiple players in a game, and that's exactly what happened. Deandre Ayton left that game with a left calf strain, looked like it was non-contact, had to be helped off the court by his teammates, could not put any weight on that left leg, and that's not good. I think we're still waiting to hear back on some imaging. I have not seen an update other than he will not play in the game on Wednesday versus the Nuggets, though obviously if you saw him walk off the court or basically hobble off the court in that game, you could have probably said right there he wasn't going to play in that game versus the Nuggets. So we don't have any specifics yet on the nature or the severity of that calf injury for DeAndre. So, there's probably no real point in speculating a whole lot right now, but other than to say it didn't look very good. And maybe we'll get lucky, maybe it won't be anything too awful serious. But when a guy can't put weight on his leg and it's something non-contact, and they're listing it as a calf strain right now, that's just generally not a good thing. So we'll have to wait to hear about that. But Deandre at least out for the second game versus the Nuggets on Wednesday, and that does give him quite a bit of time to heal up and get treatment during the All-Star break. I imagine that he probably had some plans for the All-Star break. I don't know what that means for that. And again, depending on the injury. If it's something that's going to take a while, probably some rest is what's needed. And if it's something that's even more severe than that, then, at that point in time, you can probably, enjoy some of your downtime before doing anything else. But DeAndre Ayton out for the game versus the Nuggets after going out in the first game versus the Nuggets. Blazers also lost Scoot Henderson in that game with a right ankle sprain. Looks like he rolled it pretty bad. He is also listed as out for the game versus the Nuggets. I don't think that's injury is as serious as Ayton's injury, just watching both of those. And it looked like Scoot was on the court today with the team. They did have a practice today in Denver. So, he's at least up and ambulatory, whereas DeAndre, I believe, was getting imaging at the time. So, not good news for Scoot or the Trailblazers, but probably hopefully not that bad of an injury. Well, again, we'll have to see. He has had some ankle stuff throughout the year, so every time you have another one of those, you probably extend that timeline out a little bit longer. But either way, no Scoot for that game as well. The second game versus the Nuggets, so which also brings up the question of what his availability is going to be for All-Star Weekend. Scoot's supposed to be playing in the Rising Stars Challenge on Mitch Richmond's team with alongside Toumani Camara and a bunch of other very good players. The odds-on favorite, in my opinion, to win the Rookie Sophomore Challenge and then perhaps move on to face the All-Stars on All-Star Sunday night. And I think they'd have a good chance in those games as well. But depends on what Scoot's availability is going to be for that one. He has already been listed as out for the game on Wednesday, which, if you're not playing in a game on Wednesday, a game that the Blazers could definitely use Scoot because, they're going to be down a fair number of guys. You kind of assume that playing Friday night in an exhibition would probably not happen. But again, I don't know the severity of that injury. I don't know. I mean, but do you chance it to play in a rookie sophomore game? I feel like did Scoot get injured in the rookie sophomore game last year as well? Either way, I would definitely say that injury puts Scoot's availability for the rookie sophomore challenge in jeopardy. He has participated 4 times as well. 3 times this would be his 4th time. So, he has kind of been there, done that in a certain respect, but also like the new format. I know he was really looking forward to playing with Toumani. And again, really having a chance to go out there and win the rookie sophomore portion, and then maybe even move on and do something in the actually All-Star Sunday night as well. There are some cash prizes for the winners of those tournaments, as I understand it. So, that's always a nice little ancillary as well. I mean, that's not going to factor into the decision making, but I would definitely say that his status for All-Star Weekend is very much to be determined at this point. So no DeAndre Ayton. No Scoot Henderson, no Matisse Thybulle, who has yet to play this season. And then I believe Jeremy Grant and Robert Williams are listed as questionable for the game versus the Nuggets. One guy who did have a game in a very nice night in the first game versus the Nuggets was Donovan Clingan. Probably shouldn't have skipped over this when we were talking about the Nuggets game, but Donovan did have a very nice night. Goes a perfect 8 of 8 from the field for a career high 22 points to go with 7 rebounds and a block in 32 minutes. And one of those shots, I believe the last one was a 3-pointer. So Donovan had made his first 7 shots and then still pulled up to take a 3 to stay perfect, which, some guys might not jeopardize a perfect night by shooting a 3, particularly a 7-3 center, but Donovan Clingan, not one of those guys. So shout out to you, Donovan, for taking and making that shot. Donovan's 8 of 8 performance is the most makes by a Trailblazer in a game without a miss since February 9th, 2000, when Arvydas Sabonis did it. Clingan also tied Arvydas for the second most makes without a miss by a Trailblazers rookie by going 8 of 8. Now, granted, Arvydas was a 31-year-old at the time, and I believe Donovan is 20. But rookies are rookies. Sabonis actually holds the record for the most makes without a miss for a rookie as a Trailblazer with 9. He had a run his rookie season in February, I believe, where in the course of 10 days, I think he went 8 of 8 from the field and 9 of 9 from the field. Arvydas Sabonis, one of the greatest to ever do it, my first personal favorite player. But Donovan Clingan doing something that no one has done since Arvydas Sabonis, which, if you're a Blazer fan, anytime you can hear Arvydas Sabonis in the same breath with Donovan Clingan, you should feel pretty good about that because obviously, Arvydas, one of the best to ever do it, would have been one of the best in NBA history had he been able to come over to the United States as a young man rather than a 31-year-old. But even as a 31-year-old, absolutely playing great basketball as a rookie. Interesting that Damon Stoudemire, another Portland guy, won Rookie of the Year that year. I think Arvydas was second as a 31-year-old. Interesting that both those guys, both with Portland connections, and Damon ends up winning Rookie of the Year. Arvydas had a good case for Rookie of the Year, though obviously as a 31-year-old, that would have been a little bit odd, and I don't think probably Sabonis probably would have wanted that attention anyways. But either way, Donovan Clingan now with the most makes in a game without a miss since Arvydas Sabonis February of 2000, which was at least 5 years before Donovan was born. So we're getting to that point, folks, where guys are setting new records or at least tying records with players when they weren't even born when those players were setting those records. So that's your making you feel old of the day there. But good news there for Donovan. And with Deandre Ayton out and with Robert Williams' status kind of up in the air for that game versus the Nuggets, you would assume that Donovan Clingan is going to be playing as many minutes as they can possibly throw at him over these next couple games. And obviously, it really depends on the status of DeAndre's injury, whether or not he's going to be able to come back soon. If he's not able to come back soon, you assume that pushes Donovan into the starting lineup. Though they might go back and forth with Rob as well. Both Donovan and Rob have missed time this year with injuries, and I know they're really trying to be careful with those injuries to make sure that they don't kind of become long-term lingering things. And in Rob's case, that's just a way you have to approach any game with Rob with a person with his injury history. So I imagine that probably means you're going to see quite a bit more of Duop Reith here in the second half of the season, or at least until DeAndre is able to come back, if that is in fact the case. You're probably going to see Jabari Walker playing some small ball five, which he has been doing quite a bit this season, at least when their injuries have kind of pushed him into the rotation. But if you're someone that's wanted to see Donovan Clingan play more minutes and has been concerned that he hasn't been getting enough minutes, you are about to get what you've been hoping for, because Donovan is going to be playing a whole lot here. So he's going to have to try to stay out of foul trouble. Obviously, the conditioning is going to be, I won't say an issue, but something just going to have to monitor. The team will have to monitor. Playing mile high basketball against Nikola Jokic, one of the best centers to ever do it. That's a tough task for anybody, particularly for a rookie who is being thrust into the starting lineup. But that's good experience for Donovan, and something that again, a lot of people feel like they want to see these young guys get a lot of minutes. If the point of the season is to rebuild and to kind of figure out what you have with some of these guys and get some of these guys start their progression as NBA players. Throwing a whole lot of minutes at guys is one way to do it. I don't think it has the benefits that a lot of people seems to think that just throwing minutes at guys, even when they don't earn them, has. It has not been my experience that that's necessarily the best way to bring rookies and young players along. But when you're in that situation and you need the guys to play the minutes, you might as well do it anyways. So, while this isn't a situation where you're sitting down someone else who should be playing more minutes because they've earned it in order to give more minutes to somebody else because they're a young player. This is a situation where there's been injuries, and Donovan is going to play all the minutes he can probably handle at this point. There was also that stat that Donovan, the fourth best rim protector in the NBA this season. So we'll be able to see if he's able to keep that up, playing more extended minutes. And again, foul trouble is going to be something that Donovan's going to have to be cognizant of. I'm sure he is. Teams are going to be testing him at the rim over and over and over again. And it's going to be interesting to see if that's something that Donovan is able to take advantage of, or if that's something that opposing offenses are able to take advantage of. So either way, no Deandre Ayton, at least for the next game, and I'm guessing for a bit after that. So Donovan Clingan getting thrust into the starting lineup, one would assume. Scoot Henderson also out for the final game before the All-Star break versus the Nuggets. He did get the start in the first game versus the Nuggets with Jeremy Grant out. If Jeremy Grant doesn't end up playing, you would assume, if nothing else, Shaedon Sharpe probably gets thrust back into that starting lineup. Maybe Delano Banton, who ended up playing quite a few minutes versus the Nuggets as well. Probably the only other player I would say that had a good night versus the Nuggets was Delano Banton, other than Donovan Clingan. Though, I mean, an okay night for Denny, even though, again, shooting 5 of 12 from field for Denny. Again, I think that wrist hand is giving him some issues. Tumani just 6 points in that game as well. 10 points for Deandre before cashing out after 18 minutes. Didn't have a rebound in that game as well. I'm wondering when the last time Deandre had a game where he didn't have a rebound, though. Again, he only played 18 minutes in that one. Ant goes 5 of 13 from the field and 3 of 7 from 3 for 17 points. And Scoot Henderson just 6 points, 2 rebounds, and 3 assists before leaving that game with that ankle injury. But he did, as I mentioned, have Delano 6 of 16 from the field, 7 of 7 from the from the free throw line, excuse me. 7 of 9 from the free throw line, pardon me, to go with 6 assists, 22.6 assists, a rebound for Delano Banton in 28 minutes. I would not at all be surprised if Delano saw some more minutes coming his way. And I feel like Chauncey's been using Delano lately as a guy when the team seems like they're kind of low energy and they need someone to go out there and be able to get his own shot. Delano's getting those opportunities. Now, didn't play a whole lot during the homestand because the team was playing so well. But, it's nice to know that you got a guy like Delano out there who, if guys start to kind of struggle a bit, you're able to throw him out there and give you some instant offense. I imagine they're going to need some of that instant offense versus the Nuggets in the final game before the All-Star break, because they are going to be rather shorthanded in that game. And finally, before we wrap up this edition of the Briefcase, wanted to mention too, it happened this weekend. The Blazers signing Sidy Cissoko to a 2-way contract. Had to waive Taze Moore in order to do that. Sidy had played his rookie season with the Spurs. Just to do some press release reading, in 29 career starts, Cissoko has accrued career averages of 2.3 points on 49% shooting from the field and 61% shooting from the free throw line, 1.1 rebounds and 0.6 assists in 6.7 minutes per game for the Spurs. Former G League Ignite product, teammate of Scoot Henderson at the G League Ignite, as you are maybe aware. He was drafted 44th overall by the Spurs in the 2023 NBA draft and has appeared in 59 games, 31 of those being starts. In the G League, he's recorded 14.6 points on 46% shooting from the field and 64% shooting from the free throw line, to go with 3.8 rebounds, 3.2 assists, and 1.2 steals in 29.2 minutes per game for the Austin, I believe, Toros and the Ignite. So a combination of his G League numbers there. So Cissoko arrives in Portland, joins up with the Remix, and has one heck of a game with the Remix. He goes 7 of 8 from the field, 5 of 5 from 3 for 22 points, go with 7 assists, 5 rebounds, 4 steals, and was a plus 40 in 33 minutes in his first game with the Remix, which was a 139-119 victory versus our good buddy Nasir Little and the Sioux Falls Skyforce on Monday at Chiles Center here in North Portland. That was a record 139 points scored for the Remix, if I'm not mistaken. So the Blazers bring in Sidy Cissoko, and with the injuries that they have, if those injuries are more long-term, I would not at all be surprised if he got called up to the Trailblazers, seeing as how, I mean, they're obviously not going to do it for the game on Wednesday versus the Nuggets, not enough time, and probably just hasn't been around long enough to put him in that kind of situation. But, depending on how long Jeremy Grant's out, and if that injury is something more serious, depending on if Scoot's going to miss extended amount of time, depending on if Deandre is going to miss extended amount of time, you got Sidy, who has some size, who can, or excuse me, Sidy, who can give you a little something in terms of a positionality. Obviously, a guy you signed to a two-way contract that was just waived by the Spurs. So, a guy who still needs to kind of learn the ropes of the NBA. So maybe you don't necessarily thrust him into those minutes right away. But I could see that happening once they come back from the All-Star break. So, we'll have to wait and see on that one. But an interesting little signing there for the Trailblazers. And obviously a guy who they feel like has some talent, because they did have to waive Taze Moore in order to do that. Usually if you're going to waive a guy, you got to have a bit of a feeling about a player in order to make a move where you're going to cut somebody else. So would not all be surprised if we see Sidy Cissoko playing some Portland Trailblazer basketball after having a very good debut with the Rip City Remix, who they're heading out on the road here. So I was going to say you come out here to North Portland and check them out at Child Center on the campus of University of Portland, but I believe that they are heading out for a road trip, so maybe don't do that just yet. But the next time they're in town, check them out up here on the peninsula. And that will do it for this edition of The Briefcase. Thank you so much for joining me. As always, The Briefcase presented by Spirit Mountain Casino. I will be back on Thursday in order to wrap up the first half, or the unofficial first half of the Trailblazer season, and then maybe preview a little bit of the All-Star weekend, particularly if we know what the status of Scoot Henderson is going to be. Obviously, Toumani Camara as an injury replacement will be there for the rookie sophomore game, along with Bryce McGowens, who is on a two-way contract for the Trailblazers. So we'll talk to you again after the game versus the Nuggets, and wrap up again the first unofficial half of the season as we go into the All-Star break. So until then, thank you so much for joining me. As always, please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcast to both The Briefcase, to the Blazers Balcony, and Section 113. Thank you so much. As always, we'll talk to you soon. I'm Casey Holdahl. You've been watching The Briefcase presented by Spirit Mountain Casino. Go Blazers.